The alarm bells rang across Terra Command at exactly 3:42 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Admiral Lisa Carter rushed from her quarters to the communication center, her boots echoing in the empty hallways. The night shift officer stood frozen at their stations, staring at screens filled with data that should not exist. "What do we have?" Carter asked, pulling on her uniform jacket as she walked. Lieutenant Mike Brown turned from his console, his face pale. "Ma'am, we have multiple objects entering our solar system. They're huge. The biggest one is over 10 miles long." Carter moved to the main display screen. 3 massive shapes hung in space beyond Neptune's orbit, their crystalline surfaces reflecting starlight like frozen diamonds. They moved with purpose, not the random drift of asteroids or comets. These were ships. "How long have they been there?" she asked. "They appeared 15 minutes ago, ma'am. There's no warning, no energy signature before arrival. They just materialized out of nothing." Carter felt her stomach tighten. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries, but not like this. Not with ships that could appear anywhere without warning. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," she ordered. "Code Black protocols are in effect immediately." As the orders went out, Carter walked to her private office and activated the secure communication system. Within minutes, faces appeared on her screen from secret locations across the solar system. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his ready room aboard the EU's Defiance, hidden in the asteroid belt. Captain Nina Walsh checked in from her position near Jupiter. Captain Sam Baker confirmed his squadron's status from behind Mars. "They're here," Carter said simply. "The day we've been preparing for has arrived." Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "Any communication attempts from them yet?"
"What?"
"But intelligence suggests they're scanning our planet. Every radio signal, every satellite transmission, every piece of electronic noise Earth produces. They're learning about us." The meeting continued for 20 minutes, each captain receiving specific orders. When the call ended, Carter returned to the command center. Alien ships had moved closer, now positioned near Mars' orbit. Their intentions remained unclear, yet their presence sent a message. Earth was no longer alone in the universe. At 6:15 a.m., the first transmission arrived. The main screen filled with swirling colors that gradually formed into the image of a tall, elegant being. Its body appeared to be made of living crystal, with geometric patterns running along its arms and face. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, though its mouth moved differently than the sound suggested. "People of Earth," the being said, its voice carrying a tone of benevolent authority. "I am Ambassador Kethber of the Zephyrian Collective. We bring greetings from the civilized galaxy." Carter exchanged glances with her staff. The translation technology was impressive, but the word choice felt wrong. Civilized galaxy, as if Earth existed outside civilization. "We have observed your world from afar," Kethver continued. "Your species shows promise, despite your primitive technology. The collective has decided to extend an invitation for peaceful contact." The image shifted to show the interior of one of the alien ships. Vast chambers filled with impossible technology stretched into the distance. Beings similar to Kethver moved through corridors that seemed to bend space itself. Energy flowed through transparent tubes in patterns that hurt to watch. "We offer knowledge," the ambassador said. "Medical advances that could eliminate disease from your world. Energy systems that would end your dependence on fossil fuels. Transportation technology that would carry you to the stars." Carter felt the temptation in those words. Humanity had struggled with environmental problems, diseases, and the limits of chemical rockets for decades. What the aliens offered could solve everything. "But such gifts come with responsibility," Kethver added, his tone becoming more serious. "The galaxy operates under certain laws, certain expectations. Species that join the collective must accept guidance from those with greater wisdom and experience." There it was, the catch. Carter had read enough history to recognize the pattern. Every empire in human history had used similar words when approaching smaller nations. Protection in exchange for submission. "We understand this may be overwhelming," the ambassador continued. "Therefore, we invite a small delegation of your leaders to meet with us at a neutral location. We have constructed a station beyond your red planet for this purpose. Come in whatever vessels you possess. We will ensure your safety. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Carter stared at the empty screen, her mind racing through possibilities and dangers. Dr. Amy Rodriguez arrived an hour later, her hair still messy from sleep. As Earth's leading expert on theoretical alien contact, she had been awakened and brought to Terra Command immediately. "What's your assessment?" Carter asked, leading her to a briefing room. Rodriguez studied the recorded transmission on a portable screen. "Classic dominance display," she said after several minutes. "Notice how they emphasize their superiority. Primitive technology, greater wisdom, guidance from above. They're not offering partnership. They're offering to be our rulers. And if we refuse?" They didn't mention that option, did they? In their experience, refusal probably doesn't happen. When you can build ships that appear from nowhere and technology that bends space, most species probably surrender immediately. Carter nodded. The Zephyrians had made one critical error, though. They assumed humanity would react like other species. They had no idea what they were really dealing with. "Prepare a diplomatic team," Carter ordered. "Small group, minimal technology. We need to look exactly as primitive as they expect. Who do you want to send?" "Morrison can handle it. He's got the best poker face in the fleet. He's been practicing." Looking impressed by alien technology for years, Rodriguez smiled grimly. The rehearsals are finally paying off. As the day progressed, reports came in from around the world. Alien ships had been spotted by amateur astronomers, causing panic. On social media before government agencies stepped in to control the narrative, official statements spoke of natural phenomena and space debris, buying time while the real preparations continued. In hidden facilities across the solar system, humanity's true fleet stirred to life. Ships that had been under construction for decades received their final systems. Weapons that existed only in classified files were loaded and tested. Crews that had trained in secret for their entire careers took their positions. The UES Titan, humanity's largest warship, powered up its main reactors in a shipyard hidden behind Jupiter's largest moon. Captain Alex Stone reviewed his orders one final time before sealing them in the command safe. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of vessels scattered throughout the system. On Earth, General Chris Warren coordinated ground-based preparations. If the aliens decided to attack the planet directly, they would find it far from defenseless. Hidden weapon systems came online in major cities. Orbital defense platforms, disguised as communication satellites, armed their weapon systems. But the real show would happen in space. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. They had learned from every science fiction story, every military history book, every tactical manual ever written. The aliens expected primitive rockets and desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they would meet the combined might of the human defense fleet. Carter stood at the observation deck of Terra Command watching the stars. Somewhere out there, alien ships waited for humanity's response. They had made their offer, displayed their power, and expected submission. They were about to learn that humans had their own ideas about first contact. Morrison's shuttle would launch in 6 hours, carrying it carefully on a selected team to the alien station. They would play their roles perfectly, appearing awed and grateful for the collective's attention. Meanwhile, the real fleet would remain hidden, waiting for the right moment to reveal humanity's true nature. The Zephyrians thought they understood human psychology.
How?
They were wrong about everything that mattered. Captain Jake Morrison stepped off the shuttle and onto the alien station with carefully practiced wonder in his eyes. The docking bay stretched impossibly high above them, its crystalline walls pulsing with soft blue light. Every surface seemed to flow like liquid while remaining solid to the touch. Morrison made sure his expression showed exactly the right amount of amazement. "Incredible," Dr. Amy Rodriguez whispered beside him, playing her part perfectly. She carried a simple recording device that looked like primitive Earth technology, but actually contained some of humanity's most advanced scanning equipment. Ambassador Kethfar approached them with flowing movements that seemed to ignore gravity. His crystalline body reflected the station's lights in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, His voice carried the same condescending tone from the transmission. "Welcome, humans," he said, spreading his arms wide. "You honor us with your presence aboard this humble station." Morrison fought the urge to smile. Humble was not the word he would use for a structure that could house a small city. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. We've never seen anything like this." "Of course not," Kethfer replied without thinking. "Your people are still bound to a single world. This station was constructed in mere days using our standard fabrication technology." Commander Rick Davis, who had piloted their shuttle, made appropriate sounds of amazement. Behind his wide eyes, he was memorizing every detail of the docking bay's defensive systems. The hidden weapons ports, the shield generators, the structural weak points that a properly placed explosive could exploit. "Please follow me," the ambassador said, leading them deeper into the station. "I will show you wonders beyond your imagination." They walked through corridors that defied physics, past chambers where alien beings worked with tools that manipulated matter at the molecular level. Morrison asked questions that made him sound like an eager child, while Rodriguez recorded everything. "With her disguised sensors?" "How many species belong to the collective?" Morrison asked, as they passed a viewing window that showed space beyond. 47 civilizations have joined us," Kethfer answered proudly. "Each one discovered the benefits of our guidance. Some required more convincing than others, but all eventually saw reason." Rodriguez exchanged a glance with Morrison. The phrasing suggested that not all species had joined willingly. "What kind of convincing?" she asked innocently. Kethfer's crystalline features shifted in what might have been amusement. Sometimes young species make foolish choices. They fear change, cling to primitive ways. We help them understand that resistance only brings suffering. They entered a vast chamber, where holographic displays showed star systems throughout the galaxy. Each system was marked with different colored symbols. Morrison counted at least 200 systems under Zephyrian control, with dozens more marked in red. "The red markers?" Davis asked. "Systems under negotiation," the ambassador replied. "Species that have not yet accepted our generous offer of membership." Morrison nodded as if impressed, but his trained eye caught something else in the display. Ship positions, fleet deployments, the locations of Zephyrian military forces throughout their territory. This was exactly the intelligence Admiral Carter needed. "Your military must be vast," Rodriguez said, still playing the role of an awed scientist. 300 vessels patrol our space," Kethfer said carelessly. "More than enough to maintain peace and order among our member species." Morrison's heart raced. 300 ships total, spread across dozens of star systems. Intelligence REPORTS had suggested the number was much higher. The Zephyrians were not as strong as they wanted everyone to believe. "And here on Earth's system?" Davis asked. "How many ships did you bring?" 30 of our finest vessels," the ambassador replied. "A small force, but more than adequate for peaceful negotiations." The tour continued for 2 hours. They saw advanced medical facilities that could apparently cure any disease, energy systems that drew power from space itself, manufacturing centers that could build anything from raw atoms. All of it was presented as evidence of Zephyrian superiority. But Morrison noticed something else. For all their advanced technology, the aliens seemed to rely on intimidation more than actual force. Their weapons were designed for show, their ships built to inspire fear rather than fight battles. Everything about Zephyrian culture suggested they preferred their enemies to surrender without a fight. "Now," Kethfer said as they entered a smaller chamber, "let us discuss your world's future." The room contained a circular table surrounded by chairs designed for human anatomy. Morrison realized the aliens had studied human physiology in detail, another sign of their thorough preparation. "The collective offers your species great gifts," the ambassador began, activating holographic displays that showed Earth being transformed by alien technology. Cities powered by clean energy, diseases eliminated, poverty ended. "All we ask in return is compliance with collective law." "What exactly does that mean?" Morrison asked. "Simple things," Kethfer said with a dismissive wave. "You would acknowledge collective authority over interstellar matters. Your military would be disbanded, as protection would be provided by our forces. Resource extraction and distribution would be managed by collective administrators to ensure efficiency. Rodriguez leaned forward. If Earth's government disagrees? With these terms, the ambassador's expression grew cold. No government has ever been so foolish. The collective brings order to chaos, civilization to barbarism. To refuse our guidance would be to choose destruction over prosperity. Destruction? Davis asked. The galaxy is dangerous, Kethver explained. Species that attempt to develop independently often fall to raiders, environmental collapse, or civil war. The collective prevents such tragedies. Morrison heard the real message: submit or be destroyed. It was the same ultimatum given to every species the Zephyrians encountered. We would need time to discuss this with our leaders, he said carefully. Of course, we understand the magnitude of this decision. You have 7 of your Earth days to provide an answer. Morrison nodded gratefully, though inside he was calculating fleet positions and deployment times. 7 days would be more than enough to help with your decision, the ambassador continued. Allow me to share some history. The holographic display changed to show a solar system Morrison didn't recognize. Beautiful blue-green worlds orbited a yellow star similar to Earth's sun. The Centauri colonies, Kethver said. They refused our offer of membership. They believed their isolation would protect them. The display showed Zephyrian ships arriving at the system. Weapons fire lanced out from the crystalline vessels. Striking the planets below, cities burned, continents cracked. Within hours, thriving worlds became lifeless rocks. 30 billion beings died because their leaders chose pride over wisdom, the ambassador said without emotion. We preserved their civilization's knowledge and achievements, but the people themselves were lost to stubbornness. Ah! Rodriguez's hand tightened on her recording device. Morrison forced his expression to remain neutral, though rage burned in his chest. The Kepler system, Davis asked quietly. A more recent example, Kethver replied, switching the display to show another star system. They initially refused, then attacked our diplomatic vessels. We were forced to respond appropriately. This time, the display showed something worse than destruction. Surviving populations were loaded onto transport ships, their worlds stripped of resources. The proud civilization that had once lived there was reduced to slave labor in Zephyrian mines. 12 billion survivors now serve the collective in various capacities, the ambassador said. Their children will know only service to our cause. In time, they will forget their ancestors' foolish rebellion. Morrison had seen enough. The Zephyrians weren't just conquerors, they were the worst kind of tyrants. They offered the illusion of choice while making refusal impossible. We should return to Earth, he said, standing from his chair.
Ow.
Our leaders will need to hear everything you've shown us. Of course, Kethver agreed, rising as well. I trust they will make the correct decision. The collective has never encountered a species capable of refusing our generous offer twice. As they walked back to the docking bay, Morrison's mind raced through tactical possibilities. The station's defenses were impressive, but not impregnable. The Zephyrian fleet was smaller than expected and spread too thin across their territory. Most importantly, they had grown arrogant from easy victories against unprepared enemies. They had never faced humanity before. Back on the shuttle, Morrison maintained his act until they were well away from the alien station. Only then did he activate the ship's secure communication system. Terra Command, this is Morrison, package delivered, beginning return journey. Admiral Carter's voice crackled through the speakers. Copy that, Jake. How did they look? Morrison smiled grimly as he began transmitting the intelligence they had gathered. Overconfident, Admiral. Very overconfident. The shuttle turned toward Earth, carrying information that would change everything. In 6 days, the Zephyrians would expect humanity's surrender. Instead, they would receive an education in why some species refused to kneel. The shuttle docked with the UES Defiance 12 hours after leaving the alien station. Captain Morrison stepped aboard his ship and immediately felt the difference. Every crew member moved with purpose, their faces showing the controlled tension of warriors preparing for battle. Welcome back, Captain, Commander Lisa Park said as Morrison entered the bridge. Admiral Carter is waiting for your full report. Morrison nodded and headed for his ready room. Within minutes, the secure communication system activated, showing Admiral Carter's face, along with the other fleet commanders, scattered throughout the solar system. "What did you learn?" Carter asked, without delay. Morrison transmitted the recordings and sensor data they had gathered. "They're weaker than they want us to believe. 300 ships total across their entire territory. Only 30 here in our system. And Admiral, they're not warriors. They're bullies who've never faced real resistance." Captain Nina Walsh's image flickered on the screen from her position near Jupiter. "What about their technology?" "Advanced, but focused on intimidation rather than combat effectiveness," Morrison replied. "Their weapons are designed to destroy planets and helpless targets, not fight other warships. Their shields are powerful, but slow to adapt. Their ships are built for show, not battle." Dr. Rodriguez joined the call from Terra Command. "I've analyzed their psychology based on the interaction patterns. They expect immediate submission. Every species they've encountered has surrendered within days of first contact. They literally don't know how to handle prolonged resistance." Captain Sam Baker spoke from his hidden position behind Mars. "Did they give us the ultimatum?" 7 days, Morrison confirmed. "Submit to collective authority or face the consequences. Standard threat pattern, based on what they showed us about the Centauri and Kepler systems." The mood on the call grew darker as Morrison described the holographic recordings of destroyed worlds and enslaved populations. 30 billion dead at Centauri. 12 billion enslaved at Kepler. The numbers spoke of casual genocide on an unimaginable scale. "They made one critical mistake," Carter said after reviewing all the intelligence. "They told us exactly what they plan to do to Earth if we refuse. Now we know we're not just fighting for independence. We're fighting for survival." General Chris Warren joined the call from his command center on Earth. "Ground defenses are ready, Admiral. But this needs to be settled in space. If they get close enough to bombard Earth, millions will die before we can stop them." "Agreed," Carter replied. Fleet status report. One by one, the commanders confirmed their readiness. Captain Alex Stone reported from the UES Titan that the heavy battle group was fully operational. Captain Julie Stevens confirmed that her stealth reconnaissance ships had mapped every Zephyrian vessel in the system. Admiral Rachel Scott's carrier groups were positioned and ready to launch fighter squadrons. "What about their reinforcements?" Commander Park asked. "If this goes badly, how quickly can they bring more ships?" Morrison consulted his notes. "Their nearest major fleet is in the Vega system. 3 weeks travel time at their current technology level. The Altair system has another battle group, but it's dealing with a rebellion among the conquered species there." Carter smiled grimly. "So we have 3 weeks to deal with 30 ships before they can get help." "Less than that," Dr. Rodriguez interjected. "Based on their communication patterns, they'll send a distress signal the moment things go wrong. We need to jam their communications or destroy their command ship immediately." The planning session continued for 2 hours. Every detail was discussed, every contingency planned. Morrison's intelligence about the alien station's weaknesses would allow human forces to neutralize it quickly. The positions of Zephyrian ships throughout the system had been mapped by long-range sensors. When the call ended, Morrison walked to the bridge of the Defiance. Through the main view screen, he could see the alien station in the distance, its crystalline structure glittering in the sunlight. Kethfer was probably inside, confident that humanity would surrender like all the others. "Commander Park," Morrison said, "begin final preparations. All hands to battle stations in 6 hours." Throughout the solar system, similar orders went out. On the UES Vengeance, Captain Walsh's crew loaded the massive railgun batteries that could punch through any known armor. The UES Liberty's weapon systems came online, her missile tubes filled with warheads designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in crystalline hull materials. Hidden shipyards behind Jupiter's moons released their final products. The UES Retribution, Captain Tony Reed's newest heavy cruiser, completed its shakedown cruise and joined the main battle line. Smaller vessels, destroyers, and frigates that had been built in secret over decades took their positions throughout the asteroid belt. On Earth, the deception continued. News broadcasts showed panic and confusion as world leaders supposedly debated the alien ultimatum. Protests filled the streets of major cities, with some groups demanding acceptance of the collective's offer while others called for resistance. It was all carefully orchestrated theater. It's designed to make the Zephyrians believe humanity was divided and weak. The real decisions were being made in underground command centers and hidden military facilities. Every nuclear weapon on Earth was armed and ready, not for use against the aliens, but as a final measure if somehow the fleet failed. Orbital defense platforms, disguised as civilian satellites, powered-up weapon systems that could turn Earth's orbit into a killing field. Captain Danny Foster's destroyer squadron practiced attack runs in the outer asteroid belt, their crews rehearsing the precise maneuvers they would need when the time came. Each ship was smaller than a Zephyrian vessel, but faster and more maneuverable. It's designed to strike quickly and vanish before return fire could find them. Lieutenant Colonel Pete Johnson, now aboard the UES Defiance as Morrison's tactical coordinator, studied the alien fleet movements through long-range sensors. The Zephyrians had arranged themselves in a classic intimidation formation, their largest ships visible from Earth to any amateur astronomer with a decent telescope. "They want to be seen," Johnson observed. "Maximum psychological impact." "Good," Morrison replied. "When they're focused on looking impressive, they're not thinking about defense." Dr. Rodriguez transmitted her final analysis from Terra Command. The Zephyrian communication system operated on predictable quantum frequencies that could be jammed with properly positioned interference generators. Their shield harmonics followed patterns that made them vulnerable to coordinated attacks from multiple angles. Most importantly, their command structure was rigidly hierarchical, meaning that destroying the flagship would leave the rest of the fleet temporarily leaderless. On the third day after Morrison's return, aliens made their first mistake. A small Zephyrian ship detached from the main fleet and began scanning the asteroid belt, looking for hidden human installations. Captain Stevens' stealth ship, U.S. Shadow, tracked it carefully, noting its sensor capabilities and defensive systems. The alien vessel found nothing, of course. Human bases were too well hidden and shielded to be detected by conventional scans. But the reconnaissance attempt told Morrison everything he needed to know about Zephyrian paranoia levels. They were starting to worry about human capabilities. "They're not as confident as they pretend," he told Admiral Carter during their daily briefing. "Something about our behavior is making them nervous." "Good," Carter replied. "Nervous enemies make mistakes." The fourth day brought another development. Long-range communications intercepted a transmission from the alien fleet to their home territory. The message was encrypted, but human cryptographers had been studying Zephyrian communication patterns for days. When they finally broke the code, the contents were revealing. Kethfer was requesting additional intelligence about human military capabilities. He was concerned about Earth's lack of panic, the organized nature of the public response, and the fact that no human leaders had yet attempted to negotiate better terms. Every other species sent desperate messages by now, Dr. Rodriguez explained to the assembled commanders. Pleas for mercy, offers of partial compliance, attempts to bargain. Our silence is making them suspicious. Morrison considered this. Maybe it's time to give them something to think about. That evening, Earth transmitted its first official response to the collective's ultimatum. The message was delivered by Secretary of State Helen Brooks, speaking from the United Nations building in New York. Her words were carefully chosen to sound like the desperate plea of a primitive species. "The people of Earth are grateful for the collective's generous offer," she said, her voice trembling with what seemed like fear. "However, the magnitude of this decision requires careful consideration by all our world's governments. We humbly request additional time to ensure full compliance with your requirements." The response was exactly what the Zephyrians expected to hear. A weak species buying time, hoping for some miracle that would never come. Kethfer's reply came within hours, granting Earth 2 additional days to make their final decision. But the extra time wasn't for Earth's benefit. Morrison and his fellow commanders used those 48 hours to position their forces with mathematical precision. The final deadline arrived at noon, Earth's Standard Time. Ambassador Kethfer appeared on screens throughout the solar system, its crystalline features showing confident expectation. Behind him, the alien station's command center bustled with activity as his subordinates prepared for humanity's inevitable surrender. "People of Earth," the ambassador began, his voice carrying the same condescending tone as before. "Aye! The time for decision has come. The collective awaits your answer." Admiral Lisa Carter sat in her command chair aboard the UES Sovereign, Earth's flagship hidden behind Luna's far side. Her uniform was crisp, her expression calm. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, decades of training finally coming to purpose. "Open a channel," Carter ordered. The communication array activated, sending her image across all frequencies the aliens were monitoring. When she appeared on Kethver's screen, the ambassador's expression showed mild surprise. This human looked different from the frightened diplomats he had met before. "Ambassador Kethver," Carter said, her voice steady and professional. "Thank you for your patience during our deliberations. Earth has reached a decision regarding your generous offer." Kethver leaned forward slightly, already preparing his gracious acceptance speech. 47 species had surrendered at this moment. Humanity would be no different. "We have carefully considered the benefits of joining your collective," Carter continued. "Your technology is impressive. Your reach across the galaxy is extensive. Your power over other species is clear." The ambassador nodded, pleased with humanity's recognition of Zephyrian superiority. "However," Carter said, and something in her tone made Kethver's crystalline features shift with confusion, "after thorough analysis of your offer and examination of your methods, Earth must respectfully decline membership in your collective." Silence filled the communication channel. In all his centuries of conquest, Kethver had never heard those words spoken with such calm certainty. "I believe you misunderstand," he said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "This was not a negotiation. This was an opportunity for peaceful submission. Refusal is not an option your primitive species can afford." Carter's expression didn't change. "Ambassador, I think you're the one who misunderstands. You've made assumptions about humanity based on incomplete information. Allow me to correct those errors." She gestured to her communication officer. Throughout the solar system, quantum jammers activated simultaneously, cutting off the Zephyrian fleet from their home territory. The aliens found themselves isolated, unable to call for reinforcements or report what was about to happen. "What have you done?" Kethver demanded, his composure cracking as his communication systems failed. "Leveled the playing field," Carter replied. "You see, Ambassador, your people have grown accustomed to fighting frightened primitives with chemical, rockets, and nuclear weapons. You've never encountered a species that was ready for you." On the alien flagship, alarms began sounding as sensors detected energy signatures throughout the solar system. Kethver's subordinates worked frantically at their stations, trying to understand what their instruments were telling them. "This is impossible," the ambassador whispered, staring at displays that showed massive energy sources appearing where empty space should be. Carter smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Captain Morrison, you may begin the demonstration." Light. Years away from Earth, space itself seemed to ripple and bend. The EU's Defiance materialized from behind an asteroid, its sleek hull reflecting starlight as its cloaking system deactivated. The ship was beautiful and deadly, its weapon arrays clearly more advanced than anything the Zephyrians possessed. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Fleet," his voice carried across all communication channels. "Are trespassing in human space, withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Kethver's eyes widened as more ships appeared throughout the system. The UES Vengeance rose from behind Luna, its massive railgun batteries tracking the nearest alien vessel. The UES Liberty emerged from Mars' shadow with a full escort of heavy cruisers. One by one, humanity's hidden fleet revealed itself in all its terrible glory. 30 ships, Carter said, watching the alien fleet's panicked maneuvers on her tactical display. "That's what you brought to intimidate Earth." We counted them all. The largest Zephyrian vessel, Kethver's own flagship, began charging its main weapons. Energy built along crystalline arrays that had destroyed planets and enslaved civilizations. "You dare threaten the collective?" The ambassador snarled, his elegant composure completely gone. "We will reduce your world to ash and space dust." You're welcome to try, Carter replied calmly. The alien flagship fired first, sending a lance of pure energy toward Earth. The beam was intercepted by the U.S. sovereign's shields, which absorbed the blast without visible strain. Carter didn't even blink as her ship weathered an attack that could have cracked a moon. Our turn, she said. The response was swift and devastating. Railgun rounds fired from the UES Vengeance struck the alien flagship shields at significant fractions of light speed. The crystalline barriers that had seemed invincible flickered and failed under the precisely calculated "Salt, Captain." Nina Walsh's voice came over the fleet communication system. Target shields down. All batteries. Fire at will. What followed was not a battle, but an education. Human weapons designed through decades of theoretical study and practical testing tore through Zephyrian defenses like they were made of paper. Plasma torpedoes from the UES Liberty exploited resonance frequencies in crystalline hull materials. Shattering alien ships from the inside out, Captain Sam Baker's squadron emerged from the asteroid belt, their smaller ships moving with impossible speed and precision. Zephyrian vessels, built for intimidation rather than maneuverability, found themselves unable to track or target the human destroyers. This is impossible, Kethfer kept repeating as his fleet died around him. Your technology is primitive. Your species is young. Primitive. Captain Morrison's voice carried amusement as the UES Defiance crippled another alien ship with surgical precision. Ambassador, we've been preparing for this moment for 50 years. Did you really think we'd spend that time building chemical rockets? The alien station, that monument to Zephyrian superiority, came under attack from Captain Julie Stevens' stealth fighters. Small craft, invisible to alien sensors until they opened fire, struck the station's power core with devastating accuracy. The massive structure that had been built to a humanity began breaking apart, its crystalline walls fragmenting under internal explosions. Captain Alex Stone's flagship, the UES Titan, finally revealed itself at the edge of the system. The massive dreadnought was larger than any Zephyrian vessel, its hull bristling with weapons that made the alien ships look like toys. When it fired its main battery, the energy beam completely vaporized an enemy cruiser in a single shot. Impossible. Kethfer whispered again, staring at displays that showed his fleet being systematically destroyed. Let me explain something about humans, Carter said, her voice cutting through the chaos of battle. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know war in ways your pampered species never could. Study every conflict, learn from every mistake, prepare for every possibility. A Zephyrian vessel attempted to ram the UES Liberty in desperation. Captain Tony Reed's heavy cruiser U.S. Retribution intercepted it, the two ships colliding in a brilliant explosion that left only debris. We read about species like yours in our history books, Carter continued. Empires that grew fat and lazy on easy conquests. Bullies who forgot how to fight real wars. You made the same mistakes they all made. The surviving Zephyrian ships tried to retreat, but Captain Danny Foster's destroyer squadron was waiting. Fast and deadly, the human ships cut off every escape route. Admiral Rachel Scott's fighters swarmed the remaining aliens like angry wasps. Their weapons designed specifically to exploit every weakness Morrison's team had discovered. Within 30 minutes, it was over. The mighty Zephyrian fleet that had conquered 47 worlds was reduced to burning wreckage and life pods. Only Kethfer's flagship remained intact, its weapons destroyed and engines disabled. How? The ambassador asked, his voice barely a whisper. We listened to your stories, Carter replied. Every atrocity you described, every world you destroyed, every species you enslaved, you told us exactly what kind of monsters you were. Did you think we would just roll over and let you do the same to Earth? Kethfer's crystalline features showed something that might have been fear. For the first time in his long life, he was facing consequences for his actions. The collective will send more ships, he said weakly. Hundreds of vessels. Thousands. Carter's smile turned predatory. Let them come. We'll be waiting. Round. Earth, the human fleet began regrouping. The easy part was over. Now came the real work of freeing a galaxy from tyranny. 3 days after the battle, Ambassador Kethfer sat in a detention cell aboard the UES Sovereign. The crystalline being who had once commanded fear across dozens of star systems now stared at walls made of simple human steel. His elegant arrogance had crumbled along with his fleet. Admiral Lisa Carter entered the cell, carrying a datapad and a cup of coffee. She sat across from the alien prisoner, her expression calm but watchful. "Your people will come for you," Kethfer said, his voice lacking its former authority. "The collective does not abandon its servants." Carter sipped her coffee before responding. "Actually, they already have. We intercepted their communications this morning. High Council declared you a failure and stripped you of rank, apparently. Losing an entire fleet to primitives is bad for one's career." The ambassador's crystalline features shifted with what might have been pain. "That is impossible. I served faithfully for 3 centuries. Faithfully, maybe. Successfully, clearly. Not." Carter activated her datapad, showing intercepted Zephyrian transmissions. "They're sending a much larger fleet to finish what you started. 800 ships, according to our intelligence." Fear flickered in Kethfer's salient eyes. "You cannot face such numbers. Your fleet is powerful but small." Carter smiled grimly. "You still don't understand, do you? This was never about just defending Earth. Over the past 3 days, humanity had been busy. Wreckage of the Zephyrian fleet provided valuable technology samples that human scientists were already reverse engineering. More importantly, the quantum communication jammers had been modified to send messages across the galaxy. Dr. Amy Rodriguez spent 72 hours straight working with the captured alien communication systems. Her team had broken Zephyrian encryption completely, giving humanity access to their entire information network. "The galaxy is full of enslaved species," Carter explained to her prisoner. "Billions of beings who remember freedom and dream of revenge. They'd been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge the collective. Guess what? That someone just announced itself." Captain Jake Morrison entered the cell, carrying reports from across human space. His expression showed barely controlled excitement. "Admiral, the responses are coming in," he said. "The Altair Rebellion has intensified. 3 former collective worlds have declared independence, and the Vega System Defense Fleet just mutinied against their Zephyrian overlords." Kethfer stared in shock. "The subject species would never dare. They dared because we showed them." "It was possible," Carter replied. "For centuries, you convinced the galaxy that resistance was hopeless, that the collective was too powerful to oppose. We just proved that wrong." The human fleet had not remained idle after their victory. Captain Alex Stone's heavy battle group was already en route to the Proxima system, where intelligence indicated a major Zephyrian garrison was struggling to contain a slave revolt. Captain Nina Walsh's squadron had departed for Wolf 359, responding to desperate pleas for assistance from a species called the Cathera, who had attempted their own rebellion. "You're spreading your forces too thin," Kethfer observed. "When the main fleet arrives, you'll be scattered and vulnerable." Morrison laughed. "You still think like a conqueror? Think like liberators." The difference was significant. While Zephyrian tactics relied on overwhelming force concentrated in single locations, humanity had learned from centuries of guerrilla warfare and resistance movements. Small mobile forces could achieve strategic objectives far beyond their apparent strength. Captain Julie Stevens' stealth ships were already operating deep in collective territory, gathering intelligence and making contact with resistance groups. Her reports painted a picture of an empire far more fragile than it appeared. Dozens of subjugated species were ready to revolt if given proper support. Dr. Rodriguez joined the briefing, carrying analysis reports that would reshape galactic politics. "The collective's economic model depends on tribute from conquered worlds," she explained. "If even 20% of their territory rebels simultaneously, their entire system collapses." Carter stood and walked to the cell's small window, which showed Earth hanging blue and beautiful in space. "Your people made one fatal assumption. They believed that power came from fear and superior technology. But real power comes from having something worth fighting for." The communication system chimed with an incoming message from the outer system. "Captain Sam Baker's reconnaissance force had returned from the edge of Zephyrian space with urgent intelligence. "The main fleet is moving," Baker reported via hologram. 800 ships is predicted. They're not coming directly to Earth. They're stopping to reinforce garrison worlds that are experiencing unrest. Morrison studied the tactical display that appeared above the table. They're reacting defensively, trying to shore up their territory instead of pressing their advantage. "Which gives us time," Carter added. "Time to coordinate with the rebellions, time to position our forces, time to turn their empire against itself." Kethwer watched the humans' plan with growing horror. "You intend to destroy the collective entirely." "Not destroy," Carter corrected. "Liberate. There's a difference. We're not interested in ruling anyone. We just want to ensure that no species ever again faces the choice between slavery and extinction." The next few hours brought a steady stream of reports from across the galaxy. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. Species that had been enslaved for generations were rising up, inspired by humanity's example and aided by human advisors and equipment. Captain Tony Reed's battle group had reached the Centauri system, where survivors of the original genocide were emerging from hidden colonies to reclaim their worlds. Captain Danny Foster's destroyers were harassing Zephyrian supply lines, cutting off isolated garrisons from reinforcement. Admiral Rachel Scott's carriers had established a forward base in the asteroid fields of the Ross 128 system, a staging area for operations deep in enemy territory. Her fighters were already conducting raids against collective installations, proving that human military doctrine worked just as well in offense as defense. "The pattern is clear," Dr. Rodriguez reported during the evening briefing. "Every world we liberate becomes a base for further operations. Every freed species adds ships and personnel to our forces. The collective is losing territory faster than they can respond." General Chris Warren appeared on the communication screen from Earth. "We're receiving formal requests for alliance from 47 different species. Former collective subjects who want to join what they're calling the Terran Liberation Alliance." Carter nodded approvingly. The name was spreading throughout the galaxy, carried by quantum transmissions and refugee ships. Species that had never heard of humanity were learning that somewhere, someone was fighting back against the collective. "What about our forces?" Carter asked. "Casualties and supply status?" Morrison consulted his reports. "Light casualties so far. The Zephyrians aren't adapting to our tactics. They keep trying to fight set-piece battles against opponents who won't cooperate. Captain Walsh reports complete success at Wolf 359. Captain Stone has liberated Proxima with minimal losses. The strategic situation was evolving rapidly. Instead of defending a single world against invasion, humanity found itself leading a galactic revolution. The collective's rigid command structure, designed for controlling conquered populations, proved unable to cope with simultaneous uprisings across dozens of systems. Kethwer had remained silent during the briefing, but now he spoke with desperate urgency. "You don't understand what you're unleashing. The collective maintains order. Without us, the galaxy will fall into chaos." Carter turned to face him directly. "You mean the kind of order that includes genocide and slavery? The kind that destroys entire civilizations for refusing to submit?" "Ambassador, your version of order is exactly what the galaxy needs to be freed from." The final report of the day came from humanity's deep space monitoring stations. The Zephyrian fleet had altered course again, abandoning its advance toward Earth to deal with rebellions in their core territories. "They're in full retreat," Morrison observed, "fighting on 20 fronts simultaneously with forces designed for intimidation, not actual warfare." Carter allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. "Signal all commands. Phase 2 is authorized. Begin general offensive operations. Cross human space." Ships that had been held in reserve began moving toward their assigned targets. The liberation of the galaxy was entering its next phase. Humanity had proven that the collective could be defeated. Now it was time to prove they could be replaced with something better. Kethwer stared at his captors with growing understanding. "You planned this from the beginning. The entire war." "Not the war," Carter corrected. "The liberation. We studied your empire for 50 years, learned its weaknesses, identified every species that dreamed of freedom. All we needed was the right moment to light the fuse. Outside the cell window, Earth continued its eternal rotation. No longer a world awaiting conquest, but the heart of a growing alliance that would reshape the galaxy. The species that had expected humanity to be awed by their power had instead awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. They had awakened hope.